All right, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along. You're going to really enjoy today's session. We're doing something today that seems kind of simple, and it is simple. And we're going to make it simple, but it's incredibly powerful. And the more you master what we covered today, the better you'll be as a coach, as a wife, husband, lover, friend, and you'll find yourself using this beautiful technique in a variety of ways. And we're going to cover the basics of it, and we'll move towards the later half of the session going through an actual exercise where we'll go through the process in a lot more depth. At the end of this session, you'll be able to do the start of it, but you might not be able to do the whole thing in the many different shapes and sizes that's available. But you'll be able to do the thing. And you might be able to do this thing and that thing together. And maybe you can do both things. And have your clients doing this. Makes good sense, yeah? Today, guys, we're covering anchoring. And you know, that can be a simple anchor to get someone's attention. Could be, right? But we're going to go into more depth and how to create your own anchors and how to use anchors and possibly use them over the telephone.
Has anybody here used anchors before?
We're not talking about fishing, Jeremy.
Okay. As it turns out,
what are anchors?
You will get there. As it turns out, for those people who know what anchors are and say that they've not used them before, I would put it to you that perhaps you are mistaken. When you see a red light, what is your immediate reaction when you're driving a car? Thank you, Rusty. That's pretty much spot on. When you hear someone whistling, what do you generally do? The answer is that we generally respond in the way that we have been conditioned to respond. Anchors have been set up for us our entire lives. Good teachers will use anchors in the classroom or on a Zoom training. You might notice from time to time that Adrian moves around or to specific spots. We will use different locations to represent character A and character B. These are things which can be done either visually, auditorily, kinesthetically. Spaces have anchors in the same way that objects, voices, sounds, movements, all of these things are anchors. So now that I've explained that concept, who here has used anchors before? That's a much better show of hands. Who here has consciously set up an anchor? Quite a lot of people. For the purposes of demonstration, I'd like everybody to think about the sensation of gratitude or gratefulness. Think of a time when you were grateful. Think of where you were. Think of how it felt. Think of any sights or sounds that are associated with that memory of gratefulness. And relive that sensation. And remember that just about every time you get up in the morning, you have the opportunity to feel grateful. And one of those things that happens almost every time I get up in the morning is I walk to my refrigerator. I open my refrigerator and I open the door. And in the door is an egg. And it reminds me that it is another day and another chance to be grateful. It's not much, but every time I see this egg or any other egg, I am reminded to be grateful. Sometimes when I'm walking through the grocery store doing my weekly shop and I'm reminded at how much of a chore it can be, I walk down a particular aisle past rows and rows of eggs, and I realize how much there is to be truly grateful for, even in a dull chore. Who here's hungry? Who wants me to explain what happens when I see a scrambled egg? Anchors. Anchors are so useful in your life, and knowing that you actually have the power to consciously connect anything in your life with an instruction to your subconscious or your conscious is incredibly powerful.
Cool. So it is quite simple, yeah? It's quite simple, but we're going to make it and bring a bit more conscious awareness to it. And obviously some things are more powerful than others. And we've covered anchoring in various aspects already. In fact, I think in the very last session on metaphors, I spoke about the past, the current, and the future. Remember that? So that's the spatial anchor. The anchor isn't a physical one. The anchor is a space on the ground, or it could be like a special blue chair. So one of my favorites to use is the space anchors or spatial anchors. And when I'm working with clients face-to-face, I'll very often have them not just doing like a "you're anchored" process, but I might have a very detailed process where we'll have several like boxes or spaces on the ground. And it could be their past, it could be in 1 month's time. Looking around, seeing what's happening, 2 months' time, 3 months' time. Right? And in each space, 2 months, 1 month, now, I can take the client out, I can bring the client, I can talk to the client can share things, and the client can point back, or I'll point back. So what did he have to do at the 1 month mark? And my client and I are looking at the 1 month mark, and he steps into the 1 month mark. So it's a very good way for us to kind of break some things down. So spatial markers on the ground, we could have a chair, and over the telephone, my clients are often in a chair, and I'll often ask them, where are they sitting? And my clients are sitting in a chair, and they've been in a chair for maybe 30 minutes, and I might ask them to get out of the chair. This is just over the telephone. Now, client, come out of the chair. I want you to look back at that man that was sitting in the chair 5 minutes ago saying that he couldn't do it. So now my client is seeing him. One of my favorite tools in NLP is perceptual positions, which is basically this. And sometimes we might get them to stand out somewhere else. And stand, or maybe be like a fly looking back. So rather than the person seeing everything through their day-to-day mind with all their brain waves and worries, we use anchors like that to separate them. In fact, timeline therapy or Gestalt therapy, that has anchors, but instead of being spatial anchors, it's all based in time. So can you imagine, or can you recall how much fun you had as a kid? And what's one of the funnest things you did as a kid? Like my kids were just building cubby house under the staircase. So much fun. What's some of the funnest stuff you did as a kid? So right now, you're not going to a spatial anchor, you're going into time for a time-based anchor. A few months ago, I was doing a session and the police turned up at my house. Yeah. I'd done nothing, but my heart rate was like boom, 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 boom. Why would my heart be beating like this if I've got nothing to hide? Why would my heart be beating if I've got nothing to hide from the police? Okay, this is your time to give a funny comment. I know we've got some smart asses in here.
From all those times you have been in trouble with the police, Adrian.
Yeah, right on. When I was a kid, I used to get into trouble. When I was a kid, when the police were coming, we were often running. So now, as an adult, when police knock on the door, my instant reaction is, I've got nothing to fear. I've done nothing wrong, but my heart is still beating like this. It's a conditioned response from all those times as a kid. I've been petrified when I was doing stuff wrong. And now it's 2020. I haven't done anything wrong in like years. Like
at least 6 months.
I still have that conditioned response from when I was a kid. Now, how many of us or our clients have conditioned responses or have anchors that we're unaware of? Now, I'm not sure, Jay, are you holding up 5 or does each finger mean 10? We've probably got tons of it. One of the biggest anchors today, let's see what I got, is money. There's massive anchors around money. A lot of people, if they see a bag of money, they get excited, and some people get scared. If I was to ask you to borrow $100, some people would be like, yeah, sure, Adrian, no worries. Do you want it in RMB or USD? But some people would be like, oh. I like to think that a lot of that is based off our beliefs and our value systems. But somewhere in there that, values, belief systems, capabilities, behavior, environment, at various places in that neurological levels, we have the anchors. Now, if you find yourself suddenly pissed off or annoyed or a client says something and you kind of get triggered, you know what I mean by getting triggered? A trigger generally happens after an anchor. A trigger generally happens after an anchor. The anchor is a red light. You see the red light, you slow down. Sometimes we're not aware of the red light, but we're aware we're slowing down. So if we find ourselves slowing down or getting angry for no apparent reason, or our emotional state changing and we're not sure why, Where is the anchor? I remember flying back into Australia. I think I was going through Bali, which is a very rare thing for me at the time. And I saw all these people like covered from head to toe in tattoos, and everyone's got like plaid wrap around their arm from their latest tattoo. And that's quite a different sight for someone that's been in Europe for the last year or Shanghai for the last years, you know? And when I saw all these tattoos and these people, it's like the brakes on the car was going on. I was feeling like I was triggered. There was something inside of me, and the anchor was something about all these people with tattoos or being bogans or anything. So that was a really good indicator for me that, hang on, there is an anchor in my life, and I didn't like the reaction I had. So I went and I resolved the issue. That resolving the issue, by the way, is what we commonly known as shadow work, or Carl Jung talks about that work.